One. Now.
Good morning. It is September 6th. We're here for our regular commissioner meeting. We have a full slate of commissioners. We have our administrator and the clerk of the board. And at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please rise and join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes, July 25th, August 8th, and August 15th. Is there any additions, corrections, or revisions?
No.
All right. Takes us down to the approval of the consent agenda. Or, wait a minute, no, we got two
vouchers.
Please.
Okay. Move for approval of fund expenditures in a total amount of $127,343.16 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by two representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move for approval of salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll in the total amount of $981,372.92 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by two representatives of the auditor's office.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now it takes us down to the consent agenda. There are 5 items on the consent agenda today.
Move for approval of consent agenda items 1 through 5 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for items 1 through 5 on the consent agenda. With no need for discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Takes us down to the first item of regular business, conditional use permit to allow for the construction and use of a detached accessory unit. Mr. Bratton.
Thank you, Chair. Hear it warming up. There. As mentioned, this is a conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit. It's conditional use permit 23-01. The address is 350 Quinto Road, Eltopia, Washington. Parcel number is 123563028. The zoning is RC5, Rural Community 5, which means 5-acre minimums. Comp plan is rural settlement, which means this is in Lammard. And the property size is approximately 4.99 acres. The location is south of Quinto Road. I don't know if that's Quinto or Quinto, but east of Ziegler Road and north of Patricia Road. As mentioned, it's a detached accessory dwelling unit request. Approximately 1,500 square foot for the replacement of a double-wide manufactured home. And they provided a site plan that provided a gravel driveway, existing single-family dwelling, septic area, well, irrigation water, power pole, water line from the well to the existing home, and the location of the proposed DADU. This is the subject property. Right there. Oops. What the property looks like, as you can see in the posting of the site. That's a close-up of the property. And it's a little hard to see, but as described in the earlier description, that's a site plan. On or about June 1st, staff sent notices to technical agencies, property owners within 1 mile, the Franklin County Graphic. We also posted the pending land use action sign on the property and submitted the SEPA to the SEPA registry as 202-302-553. We received no public comments. regarding this proposal. Zoning, use regulations, this is what the recommendation was based upon. Accessory dwelling units detached is permitted if the parcel is 2 acres or larger in size, shall not exceed 1,600 square feet, and may be in a factory assembled home, and they may be permitted through a CUP, hence why we are here. Agency comments received is that they'll need to get a placement permit for the factory assembled structure. They can't sell that unit separate from the property, so if they were to sell the property, it would both units, or they would have to remove one of the units, whichever they would want to do, but you can't break that piece off under current codes. The DADU shall be 5 years or newer. And it has to be used as a residence. For example, DADUs are not generally allowed to have, say, a home profession in them, and located in the actual DADU. The main house, the primary house, could have a home occupation, but the DADUs, those are the accessory use to the property. Applicant will need to follow the provisions of Franklin County Code for DADUs 17.66060, and then they'll need to have completed proof of water availability and or a well log required at the time of FAS placement. The Planning Commission concurred with planning staff's recommendation, and their recommended findings of fact are that the proposed use in the RC5 zoning district is in accordance with the goals and policy of the Franklin County development regulations and comp plan. It will not adversely affect public infrastructure. The proposal will be constructed, maintained, operated to be in harmony with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity. It's just a house. The location, the height of the structure, and site design will not discourage the development of permitted uses on property in the general vicinity or impair the value thereof. This area is primarily residential or micro farms type of activity. Operation in connection with the proposal will not be more objectionable to nearby properties by reason of noise, fumes, vibration, dust, traffic, or flashing lights than would be the operation of any permitted use. It's a residence. The proposal will not endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare if located where proposed. In addition to our standard conditional use permit language, there are comments that they will be required to comply with from the Washington Department of Ecology, Franklin County Public Works, Franklin County Planning and Building, and the Confederated Tribe of Colville. It's an inadvertent discovery protocol. If they were to find something, then those protocols would go into place. In other words, they don't have to do a full-blown archaeological study or anything like that. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I do have a proposed motion.
Questions, commissioners?
When they do a conditional use permit like this, does it matter what size the existing home is that's already there? I mean,
Not generally, no, because our lot requirement is so large. I mean, you would have to have a humongous house for it to start affecting
but the
things.
restrictions on the house has to be, the one they're building is going to be less than 1,600 square feet, is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, the maximum size allowed for a detached accessory dwelling unit is 1,600 square feet, and this is proposed at around 1,500.
Okay, and this is to take care of their parents, correct?
Yes.
No further questions.
So Derek, this is a closed record, public hearing, a quasi judicial matter, so all discussions, questions, comments have to be within the published record. If I get anywhere near the boundary, call me back.
Will do.
Okay. The new statutes are allowing for, I think, up to 2 detached accessory dwelling units on properties.
My understanding is you can have an attached and a detached.
Okay.
But there's like 3
Okay,
different pieces of
I think we're starting to
legislation.
drift outside the
Yeah.
record. That's why I said that. All right,
Okay.
good enough. You mentioned that one of the restrictions is that they can't use this for anything other than what's authorized in this record. But I thought I heard you say they couldn't run a business activity out of there. If somebody wanted to use that address as their business address in this particular case, let's keep it in the record, and wanted to do some sort of a mail order service or business or work from home, I don't see why they couldn't. So where does that restriction come from? Is that locally imposed?
In our, I believe it's in the actual DADU rules. It states that. I would have to double check. And when it comes to a home occupation, as you described, that would potentially be permitted. It's the idea of customers, because a home occupation can have customers coming to their place. I don't think that the county would have an issue if somebody was, say, doing online mailing crafts out of that.
Well, I don't think we
Because they
would.
don't get a separate address per se. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
again, it's part of the same property.
Well, I don't think we'd have an issue with it either. But again, from the record, we're saying you can't run a business there. And my question is, where does that come from? And do we really mean no business? So I guess we'll have to just for now accept that if the applicant in the future wants to do a business, they can revisit with the county. But
Correct.
I'm not convinced that that requirement is rooted in the statute or local code, but you would know more about that than I would. So if it is rooted in the code, please educate me.
Like I said, I believe it
Okay.
is specifically in the DADU section
Okay.
of the code.
Okay. Do you know if the DADU statute articulates between a business that generates traffic to the property versus any other business?
Our local.
Well,
code,
whatever the prevailing
it does.
guidance is.
I don't believe it does.
Okay.
I believe
All
it
right.
says, shall not have a home occupation, be
Okay.
used as a home occupation. Our DADU and ADU regulations are rather restrictive.
Yeah. So the primary home residence on this lot could be used for business.
Correct.
And you just said the address is the same. So I think you've answered my question. Next question, are they sharing utilities? I didn't catch that. Are they sharing a septic, a well, power?
No, the unit will be, power potentially, we don't get too into that.
Right.
But it will have its own well and septic. They were originally planning to, do an alternative arrangement, but the health department came back, I believe. Somebody came back and basically said, now you got to put in a well. So they are putting in a separate, and it's not uncommon
Yeah.
for those properties to. The well was a little surprising. Usually they do share a well in these circumstances. However, the septic is what's commonly doubled on the property. But this is a little unique in that they are having to put in their own well for that unit. And I'm not sure exactly why, but it was a determination by the health district that they had to do that. And they're okay with it. They've got that all worked out.
Okay. So as I understand the rules, you can't share the local rules that would apply directly to this application. You can't share a septic between two parcels, but
Right.
you can between ADUs and detached ADUs on the same parcel.
Providing it was originally sized to accommodate 2 households worth of flow.
Or expanded
Right.
to accommodate.
Yeah, yep.
And do you know in this case whether or not the primary one is properly sized or adequately sized for 2? I'm trying to figure out why we're putting an additional burden on the applicants for the cost of installing another septic and just getting comfortable with where that direction is coming from.
Yeah, that would be that's a health department determination, and it's based on the size.
Okay.
If they meet the appropriate size, if they had, like, say, pre-planned and overbuilt their septic, then they would just be able to proceed. It's very rare that folks overbuild their septics. They tend to put in a little bit of overage, but not enough for twice.
And this ADU is 1,500 square feet, and the primary structure from the record was how big? You know what, let's, in the interest of time, let's just skip that, because 1,500 square feet as an additional accessory is likely going to be 2 or more bedrooms,
Correct.
which is likely going to exceed the capacity of the primary septic.
Correct.
Which is what's probably driving this, so I can be comfortable with that. Okay, good discussion, thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, we'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval of Resolution 2023-250 as presented.
Second discussion.
Been a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-250. Discussion.
Derek, do you need anything in the way of approval other than this resolution? You don't need any reference to the SEPA or the CUP, because this is a CUP request, right?
Correct. That's in the resolution.
So it's inherent in the resolution? Okay, just making sure. I don't want you to walk out of here without everything you
appreciate
need. Okay.
With no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Moves us down to Resolution 2023-239, Franklin County RV Park Host Contract Extension. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you mentioned, this is for the Franklin County RV Park Camp Host 2023 contract. So the Franklin County RV Park has contracted with Bob and Joyce Terrell as camp hosts since it opened in 2004. As we saw, they have recently retired. So what we're trying to do today is hire David and Deborah Faith to contract as camp hosts from September 5th to December 31st of 2023 on a trial basis and see how things go. And if they work out, continue on through 2024, and the fiscal impact will be $7,800.
Questions, commissioners?
So I expressed some concerns about this last week when we discussed it. Chief among those was whether or not the contractor qualifies as a business, whether or not the county has an obligation to pay L&I benefits, what liability the county incurs when their service status, we'll call it, causes them to be injured in the course of executing those duties. These are all the kinds of questions in my experience that are considered annoying and bothersome up front, but after the accident become the central focus of litigation. So that's the basis for my concern. With due respect to our legal counsel who has reviewed this, and I'll remind us all that with rare exceptions, they review contracts for form to ensure that all the appropriate components are there, not for content, not for whether or not it's a wise thing to do. And in this case, the evaluation of the content and the risk falls on staff. And since the recommendation comes from the county administrator, it falls to the county administrator to ensure that we have addressed these concerns. As I read the statutes and the WACs that are relevant to this under L&I, there's a two-part test to determine whether or not a person is an employee or a contractor. And whether or not you meet that test, then there's a 6 or 7-part test based on whether or not you're involving heavy machinery or equipment. And I've been through those a few times now, and it does not appear to me that the proposed arrangement here meets the 2-part or the 6-part test under the L&I guidelines. And my interest is not to keep us from having camp hosts, which I think are a valuable function, a necessary function. It is merely to make sure that we do it in such a way that if and when there's a problem, both the county and the camp hosts are adequately and appropriately protected. There are issues of hours that are worked, and whether or not they're irregular and solely at the discretion of the contractor. They're not. There's the issue of whether or not the contractor provides all of their own supplies and equipment. They don't. There's a question of a business license. I don't see one. And because we're at a point where we're transferring between two contractors, it seems like this is the perfect time to get this right before we move into the next arrangement with the next service provider. To have taken this up in the middle of previous experience with the previous provider would have been a good idea as well, and I'll remind that the record shows that I've brought this concern up before, so this is not new. I've just chosen to use this transition time to raise it again. I've provided on the record now some, but not all of the concerns. I don't object to the board moving forward and having discussion and voting on it. Unless I hear something compelling in the discussion, I'll probably vote no just to create the record. Hopefully the potential providers of this service will understand that my efforts and my focus is intended to protect them as much as it is the county. There are ways to do this that make it clearly lawful. Yes, it might cost the county a bit more, but I'm not at all in favor of what I think is skirting the rules to save cost to make more money at an RV park that, per the county administrator's comment last week, we've kept the rates low to, I don't know if he said make money or keep us competitive, but either way, I think the rates in this park should be at or above the local market, not below it. We should not be taking tax dollars from one RV park business and using it together with low-cost employee or service options to compete with the private sector. So thanks for listening to that explanation, and it's fairly complex analysis, I think. No doubt I could have missed components in there, and I'm looking forward to being educated on those things that I may have missed.
So this is Commissioner's discussion. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Mullen?
First of all, I don't think we should be in the RV business. And if we are going to be in the RV business, then I believe our rates should be at the high end. We should set the highest rate for the RV park. So it allows the private sector to be able to charge adequately and what the market value will bear. I don't think we should be undercutting any of the RV parks in the area. And I think Mr. Peck has made a very good point that, you know, the hazards in an RV park, if someone were to slip and fall, trip on something, who is liable for that? And are they covered under L&I?
So in my comments, I'd just like to ask Mr. Gonzalez, how many years have we had a camp host?
So we've been doing it since 2004, and Shirley Jones is going to enlighten us with some of the details. But so we've been doing it the same way since 2004. I share some of those same concerns as Commissioner Peck and Commissioner Mullen in terms of, you have an independent contractor out there, and I've talked to Jeff Briggs quite extensively about it. Our liability doesn't seem to be very high despite the contractual setup. But nonetheless, there's still concern. I have concerns as the administrator to have someone that lives in an RV. We're paying them. You're not really paying them a salary. You're just paying them to stay there for free, and then you're asking them to do a pretty big job. You know, within that scope is clean up after hockey events and when things happen in the middle of the night. So. And perhaps that's a discussion. Should this be a full-time employee that works the graveyard shift? that's indemnified by the county. So some of those concerns I share. In the meantime, we've kind of are in a little bit of a sense of urgency state where we can't have Suzanne Grant stay there 24 hours a day, and have her manage that. So, ultimately, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything. You have an independent contractor, certainly is going to save you some money. They're not a full-time employee of the organization. The intent out there, for me personally, is not to make extra money, because we're not competitive right now, and I share that with you, Commissioner Mullen. I think we should charge market rate, to be competitive, because essentially, you charge $5.50. What does that do to the private sector? We certainly undercut them, so I think we need to raise those. But anyhow, it's a discussion that could be robust. But keep in mind, we have done this the same way since 2004. So why these concerns haven't been raised before, I don't know. But let me toss it over to Shirley Jones, who works with Suzanne quite closely.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, I'd like to keep this discussion with the commissioners. So I've got
Yes.
additional comments.
And I haven't had a chance to talk, so I'd like to take my time before you readdress, because everybody should have the chance to talk before somebody else has a second chance. And I'm going to allude there to what Mr. Gonzalez said. Since I've been a commissioner, and this is 5 years, I've never heard these concerns raised before. Everything was good when our previous administrator was here. We extended the contract then. I think they're valid concerns. I think they should have been raised long ago, clear back at 2004 when this was put into place. I, too, have concerns about our rates, and I've brought those up. And I think that we should be equal to, if not higher, than the private sector, because we do not want to take away their business. So with that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Peck, and then we'll go to Shirley.
Been a couple of references to this same way we've done it since 2004. Hopefully there's nobody sitting up here that thinks that it's the way we've always done it is somehow an excuse for anything. It's not. And it's certainly not a justification for doing it the same way going forward. As to whether or not this has been brought up before, the record has got numerous occasions where I brought this up before and have been outvoted in one way or another on the topic. It is not necessary, in my opinion, to make this an employee position. There are other ways to do it. My understanding is that RV park assistants, helpers, whatever label we're going to put on this, can be eligible for L&I coverage if the county pays for it, even if they're not an employee. The job, to my understanding, does not include cleaning up after hockey events. In the Rita Heads, or the materials last week, I thought it said that it didn't include that, but my memory may be wrong on that. And Mr. Gonzalez, I think I heard you say that this is not a full-time function, but if you look at the after hours and count the hours on the clock, it's, I think, as full-time as the daytime shift. It certainly would exceed our half-time hours, and if it were half-time or more, I think an employee would be entitled to county benefits. So my sense is that there may be an option where the individual can meet the tests and requirements for contractor status, and if not, then be a part-time employee. But either way, the risk is that if they, by virtue of the work they're doing and the status that they're enjoying, they are eligible for L&I and we don't pay it, then we, the county, can be liable for all of the back L&I payments, and my understanding is plus interest and plus penalties and plus potential litigation if there's an injury. So trying to protect all concerned here. I think there's a way to do it. I just don't think we're there yet.
Ms. Jones?
First of all, regarding the insurance and such, I don't know if Jeff Briggs has been able to get through. Is he on the?
Yes, I've called in. Can you hear me?
Excellent, yes.
Okay, Jeff?
So, good morning, Commissioners. If I could have the floor briefly. So looking at this in terms of the issue of whether they're an independent contractor, it would appear that this person would be an independent contractor just because we don't bring in the employees, so these are their own employees, and I believe it's just two individuals, and we don't control how they perform the work. And so that's sort of one of the primary tests of how you can determine whether or not an individual qualifies as an independent contractor, and that would certainly limit our liability in terms of what they call respondeat superior, which means we wouldn't be liable for the employee's negligent actions. In terms of whether we could still pay L&I for an independent contractor, I did not specifically look at that issue, but I think it would be similar to other independent contractors we have working for the county, and I don't believe L&I is paid for those. One common type of independent contractor we have are public defense attorneys, and I don't believe the county pays their L&I benefits. I believe it's just a lump sum that they're paid per case. This would be similar to that. So I don't know. It is something I could look into more, though. But I don't believe we'd be responsible for paying either L&I or carry any sort of liability in the event that their negligent actions in performing duties under this contract result in injury to some third party. But that's not to say that there aren't dangers that we could be liable for. You'd mentioned slips and falls, Commissioner Peck. Certainly, if there's a dangerous condition of the premises, and anyone who's using that RV park would be considered an invitee, what's called a business invitee, and we would have a duty to seek out and warn of any hidden dangers. So dangers that, based on the condition of the premises that, they wouldn't reasonably know were there, and we would have a duty to sort of seek out and remedy any sort of deficiencies in the premises. So there are some certainly liabilities just associated with running a park like that, but I'm certainly less concerned about liabilities stemming from the night manager position.
Ms. Jones, you have
Sorry,
anything
that's all
to
I
add?
have.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, do you have anything to add?
Not to that. I didn't know if you had any other questions for Jeff.
I do.
Jeff, you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Commissioner Peck has some questions for you.
So Jeff, it was Commissioner Mullen made the reference to slip and fall. I appreciate your commenting on it. This is one of those cases where I think we go to the rules and to the WACs, and we take our guidance from there. And so I'm just going to briefly read the most salient part from the L&I guidance in the L&I website. And this is the personal labor test. And it says that the individual to be in a non-employee status, or to be exempt really from workers' comp coverage, has to meet one of the personal labor tests. There's two of them. And one of them is the individual brings heavy or costly specialized equipment and other expertise to operate it. So imagine a contractor with a bulldozer.
Right.
The other one is the individual brings their own employees to perform the work, which in this case I believe they do. And you, the county, don't control the individual or their employees. So while we don't have someone there supervising them, I absolutely believe that we control the work that they do and the nature in which they do it. They're bound by county policies and procedures, and so on the personal labor test, they don't pass. That's my view. So I just want to lay out for the record why I think what I do. So that's one. If they don't meet the personal labor test, then you have to go to the 6-part test, which has 6 requirements, and they must meet all 6 to be a contractor. And when you go down through those, it's clear that there are some that they don't meet. For example, individuals establish an account with the Department of Revenue and other state agencies as required. I mentioned earlier, I don't know whether they've done that, whether they have a business license, whether they're paying B&O taxes. Those things seem insignificant now until there's a lawsuit and you're standing in front of a jury with a lawyer who's saying, well, did you ever check to see if they were a business and had a business license and were paying B&O and paying taxes on this revenue, on this in-kind revenue? Maybe they are. That's one of the 6. Has a principal place of business that is eligible for a business deduction for IRS purposes been established? Can you run a private business out of a county-owned RV park? I don't think our policies allow that. Is this entity customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, profession, or business of the same nature as that involved in the contractor service, or are they providing these services elsewhere? Maybe they are. I don't know. They must be completely free from the county's control or direction. Well, if we're saying that they can come in and they can do work and the county's never going to have any authority to say anything about what they do or how they do it, I have a hard time envisioning that's realistically. And so there are others that must pass one of 3 options. The service is outside the usual course of business. It's performed outside of all the places of the business, or the individual is responsible for the costs of the principal place of the business. Yeah, they meet some of them, but not all of them. So my argument is simply that there are vehicles that allow us to provide L&I coverage for them as workers, not as contractors, not as employees. And we need to investigate that so that they have L&I coverage, so that the county is protected if we end up in litigation. So again, I'm merely trying to read the rules, apply them to the situation, and do my best to protect everybody. And I think we're
Right.
close. I just don't think we're there. Now, I know that Mr. Briggs has read the same materials because I provided them to the prosecutor's office. And they're the folks that went to law school, not me. And at the end of the day, if the board votes 2-1 and we move forward, I'll be perfectly fine because I will have created a record and said my piece. And in time, we'll find out. So, nothing personal. Thanks.
Sure,
Anything-
and I could respond to your concerns, Commissioner Peck. I think we don't really get to the 6 and 7-part test if we satisfy the personal labor test, and that's sort of where I'm at on that. I just don't know that there's enough control there to say that we control
Right.
the employees. They don't have a direct supervisor.
Nope.
It's similar, in my view, to hiring someone, to pour a concrete patio. You tell them where to pour the concrete and what you want it to look like, but you don't really control how they do it. And so we're sort of telling them, look, you're going to be, the night watch. You're going to check people in, enforce park rules, but we're not really going to be overlooking any of that. We're just going to, give you your spot. And I really think there's just not enough control there for them to satisfy the first part. But I agree, if you get into the 6 or 7-part test, I guess it would be the 6-part test in our circumstance, you wouldn't satisfy that. So certainly if we didn't meet the personal control test, we'd have some issues. And that's really born from case law. That's, their WAC, their test it really comes from common law. It's been around for a very long time, so it's reflected in case law as well as the LNI standards. So there's really a lot of examples of it, and it really seems like the sort of scenario you'd see where there's not enough control there. But I'm certainly not infallible, and it's certainly something I could look at more if you'd like. But I did take time to review the contract as well as case law in that area, and just felt like because we don't have that direct supervisory control over how they perform the job, that there's just not enough control there to say that that they're an employee of the county, maybe more akin to an independent contractor.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond since that was in reply to my comments.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Briggs, if I hire a contractor to come to my place, and he's a professional engaged in that business and he's pouring a slab, I'm not necessarily going to stand there and tell him how to pour or mix the concrete. I'm going to assume he knows how to do this. With respect to control, I think the county controls how we check people in by virtue of procedure. The county controls how many spaces we keep open for transient. The county controls where these camp hosts are allowed to park people. The county controls the manner in which we check people in. The county controls how we collect the funds and or not collect the funds and account for those funds. The county controls by policy, what is allowed in the park and what's not allowed in the park, and the enforcement of those rules. I think there's actually a list of things here where the county has control over the manner in which these individuals perform these duties. We're, I think, approaching that point where it comes down to interpretation of simply of what control means. But if I hire somebody to come to my property and provide a service for me, let's say it's taking down a tree, there are some basic controls that I might provide as to telling them, which tree to take down. But beyond that, they're independent operators who are there. They've got their own insurance, and they go and they remove the tree per the contract. In this case, there's a number of discrete duties, including cleaning laundry rooms and the provision of materials provided by the county for them, the frequency with which those facilities will be cleaned. All these things are directed by the county and within our control. So I'm going to close on that. I don't want to take any more time, but I do lean on the side that whether these individuals are workers or contractors or personal labor, whatever we call them, I think they're eligible for LNI coverage, and I think it would be foolish for the county not to provide that on the basis that should we have an issue, we don't want to be looking back saying, gosh, it wouldn't have been that expensive to provide LNI coverage and we wouldn't have the problem that we'd have then. So that's my take on it. Thanks for the time.
Anything else?
Yes, some clarification as far as, for one thing, the Tukaha takes care of their own bathrooms. The bathrooms that they take care of are on the outside, and it's a couple of stalls maybe of bathrooms. There's not that much there. But just clarification on that. Also clarification on the rates. Every fall, Susan gathers the surrounding rates for probably about 10, 12 different RV parks. Now, those like the KOA that have pools and such, we are not going to hit the rates they hit. But we are looking at rates every single year, always have, and then we bring a contract before you. Once we talk to the administrator, get an agreement on what that rate should be. We also are looking at electrical rates, because as they go up, we also recalculate those. So just wanted to clarify that rates are watched every year, and that we consistently go above. It may be $50 above the highest, with those that are like our RV park, okay, dependent upon amenities that they've got. So I wanted to clarify those things, okay? We are watching those, always have. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add?
What I wanted to touch on. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I believe we touched on everything on that, but again, we'll see what the, L&I comes up with. It's not a bad thing to have, some type of backup insurance for them. I kind of wonder, checking with WCRP to see if the insurance that we do have in the risk pool would perhaps cover that. So that's another thing we can check into as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 2023-239 as presented.
I second. There's been a motion, a second, for Resolution 2023-239. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I think the last comment made here was interesting, and that is checking with Washington County's risk pool. My belief is the first question they're going to ask is, what was the worker's status? Were they a contractor, an employee? Were they covered by L&I? I'm on the county risk pool board with the state, and I think the fact that that would likely be among their first questions means that we ought not entertain this until we feel comfortable that we have a solid answer to that question. I don't think we do, so for that reason, I'll be voting no. Apologies for delaying the process, but my job is not to expedite, it's to get it right. So, thank you.
Well, I'll chime in here on of the contract. Services provided by the contractor. Contractor is not an employee of Franklin County. Contractor shall act as Franklin County RV Park host when office is not staffed after hours and weekends. We got it pretty well clear in the contract. So with that, we've got a motion, a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. So with that, we'll move down to public comment.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, I'd like to have the floor for a moment.
We're through with that item, Commissioner Peck, and we are moving on to the next item. We are done with that item.
Still like to have the floor.
We're not moving off the agenda. Is what you're going to talk about is on the agenda?
It is.
Have we already covered it? Yes, we have.
I wish to speak to the path forward regarding the RV park. I don't think that we should take that vote and then fail to provide any forward-looking guidance. It leaves a
Well,
bunch of people wondering, what do we do next?
Yeah,
And
they
that
are
guidance
wondering
needs to come from the board.
Well, there is no guidance. You just voted down the resolution, so we're going to
And-
have to figure out what we're going to come up with next out of this meeting.
And
We
since
can't create anything right here, right now, Commissioner Peck.
I can certainly offer a recommendation, and that's why I'd like the floor.
Commissioner Peck, we are done with that item, and we'll have to talk with Mr. Gonzalez about what we're going to go to next, okay? Now we're going to move down to public comment.
Chairman?
Is there anybody for public comment? We have one caller, correct?
Wow.
If there is one caller, it's probably me. This is Jeff Briggs, Deputy Prosecutor. I don't have any public comment.
No, we have somebody else on the phone.
Oh, okay, okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hi, we got. So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I think Brad is kind of right, and I would say that if you even provide the soap or the cleaners that contractor uses. See, when a contractor comes to your house and does some work, he brings his own soap, he brings his own saws, his own tools. And if you even provide the soap and he sprays that soap, he slips and falls and that soap gets in his eye and he goes blind, you're going to get sued. And I'll just tell you for reference, turn to the LDS church. They were sued for the cleaners they used in their church when they had members come voluntarily clean the church on the weekends. Somebody got some in their eye, they got sued for like $15 million. So you should really think about that. There's little loopholes they can come in after you and open up liabilities you're not understanding. And it seems like, you know, Clint Didier, I don't even know if you remember the first time I met you. We were in Griggs department store, the 23rd or whatever, like the 2 nights before Christmas sale when they give all those auctions away. And you were discussing how, with some kind of skinny, tall gentleman in a suit, about how the government shouldn't get involved in personal life. There's these canals out here outside of Benton County and Franklin County that have these drops on them, and they should be able to put in their own power plant. And you're just going to get involved and I was like, wow, this is what we need. And then it just turned to politics. And I just think it's the same, this RV park we're talking about, if I'm correct, is the same RV park that you illegally kicked disabled and poor people out of in 2019. Discussing at the moment the cost. This county's always discussing the cost at the moment, but they don't want you to look forward to the cost on humanity. Pasco and Franklin County participate in a sanctuary city for cheap labor and subservient citizens, scared and unable to stand up. Somehow, we weren't allowed to know, why they kicked those people out. Because the rates were going to be raised. But if you look forward, that sanctuary city, we live in a country right now where fentanyl is coming over from Mexico via China. We're bringing Chinese citizens and Mexican citizens across the border in the name of acceptance and sanctuariness. Meanwhile, American citizens of the Caucasian descent are killing themselves at an astronomical rate. And we're not allowed to say, wait, it starts in the cities. It starts with cities who are complacent and allowing the basic erosion of our country. At some point, we need to look towards the Nuremberg trials. Because at some point, what people do here is wrong and costing life. Every single day, we sit and squabble back and forth. We can't allow Brad to finish and give an idea. We can't even allow Brad's idea to go forward. We have to shut it down in the name of order. You know, it's funny because we have this beeping 3-minute rule, but I see last week and the week before, you guys let certain people go over that without even interrupting them. You let them continue on for almost 4 minutes. Meanwhile, that gentleman who lost his house because the county was negligent in their actions to secure a culvert, you guys should just pay the guy. So settle with him instead of costing it. Yeah, this is the 30 minutes I'm talking about. You let him go well over and you don't let me go over. Even though my 3 minutes started while you guys were talking about me. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move down to Commissioner and Administrator updates. Mr. Gonzalez.
Chair, I don't have a ton to talk about today, just really heavy into budget season and spending a lot of time with department heads and various stakeholders across the county and just really digging in and preparing for that. So that's taken up a ton of my time. So we're just keeping busy and continuing to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Peck.
Light week with a holiday weekend, but did have a couple meetings with a landowner who's in the city limits and trying to do infill development on some property, which led to in-person meetings with city leadership to see if we could find a way to help them develop this property. Had a lengthy conversation with another donut hole resident who had to make use of the services of our deputies with a hostile neighbor over a fence issue, if you can imagine. And you would think that it wouldn't need to get to that point, but sometimes what seem like relatively minor issues, like L&I insurance, can explode out from underneath you. Couple of meetings with Mr. Replog on TRIDEC issues. And then my last update is that I'm aware that this week, in this meeting, the board voted down an RV park resolution. And I think going forward, we need to simply contact the WCRP, the risk pool, our insurer, and get their take on the matter, and we should contact LNI and get their input on the matter. And if they say, no, you're fine, they don't qualify, then good. I'll not have an issue with it. But I think that's the path forward, and I think the resolution is probably simply providing the LNI insurance for these workers. And in the end, trying to get this done without paying for that insurance only appears to me to be a cost-saving measure. I don't see any other benefit to the county than saving money. And we're running an RV park in competition with the private sector, and we're saving money on taxes we're not paying that the competitors do. We're trying to save money and not paying L&I on people who are working there when our external retail competitors have to. It's grossly unfair competition, so at least we can contact the risk pool and L&I and make sure that what we're doing is lawful, and then we can all move forward feeling like we've done our homework and protected the people that work for Franklin County. Thank you.
Commissioner Mullen?
So I had constituents reach out on some land issue concerns that are happening in Franklin County. Also had them reach out as far as overgrown weeds at intersections, driveways, wanting to know if the weed board is spraying in North County. Also raises the question, are we mowing the sides up there in order to try to make sure that the access onto the roads is clear, visible sight. And as far as the RV park is concerned, I just don't really believe that government agencies should be competing against private industry. We should not be in the RV business. But if we, as we currently are, my opinion should be we should set the highest rate, just to make it fair to the privately owned RV parks so that they're not competing against us. They're not lowering their rates to compete with us, because we should set the standard for it. And using our risk pool to cover accidents out at the Hapo Center RV park, I don't believe is a good choice. The L&I insurance, if it is available and if it is necessary, would be a very low cost compared to what would happen if we did have an incident out there. So I think that needs further review. And upcoming this week is the Greater Columbia Behavioral Health meeting. If anybody's interested in public comment, that is tomorrow at 9 a.m. So that is my report. Thank you.
Well, again, end of the month, light week, agenda meeting, and then we had a meeting on the employees in the courthouse that are limited to 7.5 hours a day, to take them up to 8 as an incentive to keep them here, to give them more in their salary. I had that meeting after that. And then, Mr. Gonzalez, I sent you an email about our $10,000 contribution to the fair. And in return for that, we get tickets and meal tickets. And do you know how many of those we got? And may I make a suggestion for next year, is that we create, because I got told that there was elected personnel that went down and demanded that they get tickets, and they got tickets and enjoyed the fair. And I would like to suggest that we put together a lottery for the hardworking people of the courthouse, so that they may have an opportunity to go to the fair under the free tickets, if we continue to do it with Benton County.
And Jennifer Mandela did put together a report that I believe I forwarded to you. But yeah, they are distributed My take on it being my first year is I think we do need to come up with a process because it was a little disjointed. You know, people came, got the tickets. I think the intent for the tickets is for them to be enjoyed by the commissioners who can then divvy them out. And, you know, there was food passes, there was parking passes. So there wasn't really a process. People came on more of a first served basis, first come, first served basis. So I think next year we could certainly make it more organized in terms of, you know, who gets first dibs, or, you know, perhaps, you know, we expand and buy a few more for people to enjoy them. But I think we need to get some return on the investment too with, you know, signs that Franklin County is a part of it. And I think this year, the nice thing is we really participated and we had that opportunity and we had a presence there for a first time in a long time. So Curtis McGarry from Coroner's office was present. The elections office was signing people up to sign up to vote. And then we had the sheriff's posse out there. So I felt like we got a pretty good return on investment in terms of that. But I do think we can streamline the ticket process, and as far as who gets it, you know, who signs up and who gets to retain those for the duration of the fair. So, you know, so there's not any inequities or perceptions that there might be.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move down to elected department head business. Is there any elected or department heads that would like to come forward?
Good day, Commissioners. A few weeks ago, we put out a press release. We've done some get information out on the new higher rates for seniors, disabled individuals who apply for exemptions or partial exemptions from taxation on their property taxes. We've been seeing some good returns on that. I mean, today alone, I think we've got 5 new seniors showing up, besides the regulars that have to come in annually and fill out all the paperwork and have all their tax returns and income papers analyzed by us. Tomorrow, I think we've got 5. So we're seeing a pretty robust amount of new people coming in. So I'm anticipating that we will go definitely way above what we've been the last couple of years at 800 plus individuals. I'm conservative. I think we'll be at least 1,200 by the end of the year, you know, on that. But wanted to remind people to still call the office. If you have questions, the rate for Franklin County is set at $61,000. However, some income can be removed off of that. You do not have to be disabled and a senior. You can be a senior, 61 or older, and qualify with certain incomes. You can be disabled and qualify with certain incomes, and military disabled as well. So I just want to get that word out, because for some reason, one of the press releases that was changed from what we put in writing said you had to be senior and disabled and have low income. So we want to clarify that. So didn't know if you had any questions on that, but it's definitely moving forward very rapidly.
I don't have questions on that, but I have some questions on, I've got word that we've re-evaluated some quadrants in the evaluation of taxes. Have we done anything with any areas in our county?
I don't know what you mean by re-evaluating quadrants. We did all of our...
Re-evaluating property values on the tax assessment.
Not re-evaluating. I mean, we did our change of value notices and went out. If individuals during that period of time contacted us, or before they actually have an appeal hearing, before their hearing, if they, you know, we've had that opportunity to talk with them, there has been properties that we've gone out and looked at, but may have damages. Some of those would be changed. Those would be, and there's been properties that may have found manifest errors over the years on that we correct, and we do that on a continual basis. That happens every single month throughout the year.
Well, you haven't done any reevaluation on the property assessments since they were sent out for any areas in the county?
Not entire areas, no. There's been individual pieces that people have contacted us and we've done.
You have?
Well, yeah, on individuals. That's why we told everybody, contact our office, get a hold of us. If there's something that's on your property that is incorrect or wrong, we've got 5 bedrooms and you've got 3 or something, we want to get out and verify that. We've had people call and say, hey, my basement isn't finished. We'd say, let us come out and take a look at it. That would change assessed values. If somebody called and said, hey, this property, I tore this shed down and it isn't even there. Physically, we only go out once every 6 years. So if during that time they destroyed or tore something down, they can invite us out, we'd go out and verify that, but not whole big sections. Now, new construction is still being done, and that's ongoing throughout the entire county to find out what was the completion percentage as of the end of July. So we are certainly still out picking up new construction, which is critical for budget purposes for the county as well, on that. So,
I'm talking about individual homes have been reassessed since the valuations were sent out.
only if they've contacted us or we found an error in a
I think
neighborhood.
you got 300 appeals or close to 280 appeals.
That is correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they contacted you. Did you go look at theirs?
Only the people that had sections that they said there's been changes or reasons to do it. If they just simply disagreed with the value, we don't go out and look at every one of them because they're not saying there's a change in the actual item, like some of the things I just mentioned. So on those, if they invite us out saying, look, this isn't finished, or this isn't in the quality you say it is, or this, then yes, we go out, we make an appointment, we go out and see them. And there have been some changes. And there's also been withdrawals, individuals that have withdrawn their cases that we've talked with. And there's been individuals already that just haven't even shown up to the board hearings. So, yeah.
And one last thing, I was told that I won't be able to go before the Board of Equalization because I put in an appeal.
I don't make that determination. That is.
Now, John, I heard that you sent a letter to the state.
No, I did not send a letter to the state.
You didn't. That I appointed these people and therefore I can't go before.
No. I asked whether or not a commissioner or family members could be heard by the Board of Equalization. That was a question on my
Okay.
part.
And what'd they say?
I was told that it's up to the Board of Equalization to sustain the values and advise yourself or whoever that they would have to file with the Board of Taxation Authority.
Okay.
That's the Department of Revenue. We don't have any part of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just asked the question.
What was the response
Was it
you got?
appropriate?
Do I get to go before? What'd the board say?
That's up to the board. I don't talk to the board about that, and that would be up to what the board decides.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't tell the board what to do or not to do.
I
You know,
haven't
on that.
appointed any of these people on the board. They were
No,
all-
I understand.
They were all in place before
Right.
okay.
Yeah, commissioners can remove them, they appoint them.
Right.
Well, one of them you actually did appoint, one of the current ones was appointed by this current board, the most recent board member, just started this year.
Okay.
So, but.
Is there any other questions for?
I just want to say thank you, John, for always being open and willing to listen to everybody. You have the most unthankful job in the courthouse, and I know
Each one's different during time of year. Some other offices get hammered different times of the year.
That is true, but you've always been open and willing to listen to people and take in their considerations, and you've always come forward asking for those recommendations or concerns to come forward, because most people might not, or some people might not realize that if your values aren't set accordingly, then the state comes after you. So you get it from the state and you get it from the citizens. Nobody likes higher taxes, and it's just kind of a thankless job sometimes, but I do appreciate
Yeah,
your
and-
willingness to listen to people and explain the process to them, how to voice their concerns to you, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I actually was at a independent meeting privately for an interest, self-interest of my own, and as a guest for this organization last night. It was very interesting because they asked all the guests or visitors if they would just introduce themselves, and I just gave them my name and said, hey, I'd met some of your other members and that. And the first thing pops up, the chairman hold of the meeting, he said, oh, you're the assessor for Franklin County. I said, yeah, certain times of the year I'm probably the most hated person in the county. But I will tell you this, commissioners, I don't like the taxation process that we have. I think in many cases, it's double taxation. If I had the power or the authority to change it in a whim, I would do it in a heartbeat. I can tell you that I fight very hard at the legislative level. I'm on the legislative committee for the state assessors. I'm the chairman for 10 of the counties for the assessors. I'm on the executive board with the assessors, and I can tell you that we have stopped an awful lot that the west side would like to have done that would not have benefited this county or other counties on the east side or smaller counties. But just like each one of you have 1 vote out of 3, I have 1 vote out of 39. So, and just because assessed values go up, the percentage does not mean your taxes go up by that, gentlemen. And I will tell you, we've done preliminaries already for you. Last year, we were between 85 and 89 cents per thousand for the commissioner's budgetary purposes. We are below the mid-70s this year, it looks like, on all my preliminary numbers that I'll be bringing before you. And that's just on your commissioner's portion. You don't control the other budget districts, the taxing districts. I don't control any of them. We just calculate based on that. So that just give you a little bit of preliminary information. It's going to be, I believe, below the mid-70s for your piece of it this year.
All right.
So, thank you for being here. The opportunity to run a couple of tax assessment questions by you that have been on my mind. I've heard you say a number of times, and I think you're accurate in the way you say it, which is just because your assessment goes up doesn't mean your taxes are going up. And I believe that's a truthful and accurate statement. But I do believe people misunderstand that sometimes, and I think what they hear is just because your assessment goes up, your taxes won't. And that's a very different statement.
That's totally different.
You and
You're
I
correct.
both understand that your taxes, whether they go up or down, really are driven relative to whether or not yours go up or down more than the average in the county.
And whether or not budgets are approved or not, correct?
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
So if your assessment goes up, it's not a guarantee that your taxes are going to go up. But if it goes up more than the average or your neighbors, your taxes probably are going to go up. So I just wanted to, one, give you credit for being precise and accurate in the way you say it, and at the same time explain why some people are confused about it. Second thing, we the county, paid little or no taxes on our real estate, our real property, like the Hapo Center and the RV park.
None.
In fact, I forget how many acres, I think it's 15 plus acres for the Hapo Center and the RV park. We paid $16.28 in property taxes on that last year, which, or that's the current assessment, which is $3.26 per acre in property taxes.
And that would be for things like weed, pests, things like that. They're not normal property taxation items.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, but
Okay.
15 plus acres of commercial property right on Burden and 68, and we're paying $16, $3.26 an acre. I want to compare and contrast that to a privately owned RV park near Road 100 and 182, which is bigger. And I said that we were 15.4. I got my numbers confused. We're only about 7 or 8 acres there with the whatever it is, doesn't really matter. The point is that the RV park that is over by Road 100 and Interstate 182 is paying $74,979 a year in taxes, which looks to be about $4,868 per acre. And we're paying a total of $16 for our whole Hapo Center and RV park. I'm putting those numbers out because they're online, the official numbers, and it just helps draw clarity to this notion that sometimes governments get into what is essentially a retail business, and the level of unfair competition, the lack of a level playing field, is especially evident when you're talking about one operation paying $75,000 a year in taxes, the other paying $16.
and it's not just the county's property that the county doesn't pay itself or any other taxing entity on. There are other properties that are exempt, different type of exempt properties. The city doesn't pay, the state doesn't pay.
Right.
We do get some PILT from the feds on some of the property out along the river, which is still minuscule compared to what if that property was developed and you had riverfront homes or other things out there.
Well, you've gone right to my last question, so I appreciate that. Do we get PILT from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the shoreline that they own in our county?
No, we do not. We only get PILT from the Department of Energy and a small amount from the
Fish and Wildlife?
The Department of Revenue, DNR.
Oh, DNR.
A small little, couple of $100 for it. It's real minimal, couple of 100 acres of dry land and non-farmable rangeland.
I thought there was some property in the northwest corner of the county. Maybe that's DOE. It's
The Department of Energy along the riverside up there.
past practice drift into that northwest corner. It is, you're right,
Yeah,
it is
there's
DOE.
it's about $1 million total to the entire county. That's all taxing districts, schools and everything else is what they get for that.
I thought it was Fish and Wildlife because it's wetland, but I believe you're correct, it's DOE. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank
Fish
you.
and Wildlife and the Corps of Engineers, no, we don't. We don't get anything from any of them for the county, on that. So, yeah.
Begs the question, why not? But we'll take that up another day. Thanks.
You'd have to get your prosecuting attorney and the civil department involved in that and contracts probably. I don't know you'd get very far.
They're not busy
with
at
the
all.
government.
I'll get right with them.
Yeah, don't think you'd get very far. So, but I wanted to bring that information, and then if you had any questions, certainly address those for you. So,
Thank you.
thank you, Commissioners.
Any other elected or department heads?
Gentlemen, I had just a couple topics. One of them is obviously the discussion today of the RV park. So I got here in 2010, started in 11, and you can answer some of these questions because we actually, I believe, we started with a camp host. So however we processed them then would be instructive and inform whatever you decide to do today. I do know that the RV park, back in 2014, we went through a performance audit. Obviously, there was some issues with we split the cost, the losses at the HAPO Center, and we control the RV park. And I can tell you, since the time I've been here, it's been pretty clear that the board desired that their RV park never compete with the private sector. Whether that's come about or not is really a management issue. I can say that out of the 2014 performance audit, I recommended, the board agreed, we split the oversight of the RV park off because there was 100% Franklin County, 50% Franklin County, and there was money moving back and forth, and it was hard to, so it made sense for controls to separate them. So we had a full-time employee from 2014 through 2019 who was at that time supposed to report directly to the board. And I don't remember what the wage was. It wasn't great pay, but they had a person out there. It was a Franklin County employee. The prior administrator decided to eliminate this position. I didn't agree with it because it was set up very purposefully. It was at the time, I think we had good management at TRAC and at HAPO, TRAC at the time. And even though, and I believe we did, and it was probably okay and a cost savings move, but what it did was sacrifice the controls and accountability in my estimation. And so what happened then was you go into COVID, we have a change out, and all of a sudden, the oversight of the RV park, at least from, I'm talking from an auditor level. You've got people who actually worked on it or did whatever they did. As far as day-to-day management, but had that manager stayed in place there, these issues that you're bringing up and the questions you have, and this was ground covered. So the reason I heard you guys talking about this and wanted to come to the mic today is it is frustrating as we move forward, and then we adjust, and we didn't eliminate that position. At the time I talked with Keith, and I was adamant about it, but there was, the board's desire was what it was, and we didn't revisit what the cost of making that change and eliminating that position. And that kind of leads into, first of all, the second thing I want to talk about, which is the changeover of TRAC of HAPO management. because I'm delighted at the direction you guys are going with the potential of contracting with HWL. I think from an auditing standpoint and having been through that performance audit, and at the time back then, there was a desire by myself to have a public discussion, and because I was worried, I think next year's our last year, unless we renegotiate, and hopefully we will. There's a community interest in the operation of it, whatever comes out of it. But that, I believe the opportunity for all I could tell, the one thing I was disappointed about and brought up with Keith repeatedly was, out of that performance audit, there was, in 2014, there was supposed to be regular, in fact, Troy Woody used to come in on a regular basis, but out of that CLA performance audit, we shared the cost of that with the city at the time, there should have been reporting standards and things that come in on a periodic basis to assure, maintenance, inventory, talk about events, all that kind of stuff. That just kind of fell by the wayside and it never came to fruition. And my hope is in this now that we're going to contract with these guys, that we, pay attention to them informing us. This idea that the auditor, I can go look whenever I want, that's, my recommendation is you set the system up so that it reports to you, and then you can still go and look into the records. And so there was some of that framework from the 2014. We're going on almost a 10-year-old document that's been out there. But as part of this process, as auditor, and having gone from county employee managed oversight of this facility to the potential, for a, more of an industry standard with a contractor, a couple things we're working on is to try to get the finances, get everything baseline, find out what's going on with the inventory, find out what's going on, with handing the books off, and establishing so that HWL can make an informed, so they know what's there. And so that's something that we're going to be working on in the auditor's office. We'll work with Mike at trying to bring about, clarity and transparency on all of that, right down to the performance, since it's been on the interim basis. And so what we'll try to do is get all that stuff into an industry standard presentation of financials and profit loss and all that. So that's what we want to do. We're working to push for that before, my understanding is the October 1st, at least that's a working date that I've heard. And so anyway, that's my two updates, is that with the RV park, we had a host, and we had an employee there from 2014 to 2016, and then 2016 to late 19, early 20, and then that person was eliminated. So there is history there. The question about L&I, like I said, if, I know, that if the host had it before, you'd give it again, or if it made sense, that's your guys' decision, and it's an ongoing, the standards change in employment and laws and all that, so that makes sense. But I just wanted to give that background on, from an auditing standpoint and having to, look into the books and see what's going on. That's some perspective on that as well as the transition, so.
Any questions for Mr. Beaton? Thank you for the clarity.
Yep, thank you.
Any other updates?
I'm going to jump up one more time, Commissioners, just to clarify something that you'd asked Commissioner Didier. There's 2 or 3 processes on the change of value notices and things that go out. So once we certify to the Board of Equalization, we don't go in and do change of value notices in any areas, groups, even individual homes, unless there's a manifest error, we call that. Or there's a stipulation. If there's a stipulation, the party in question and ourselves have to come to an agreement, and we both sign a stipulation that goes to the Board of Equalization on that. Prior to that being certified to the Board of Equalization, there can be changes in the change of value notices at that point. And do we make some of those? We do, if certain things are brought to our attention, and then we send out a new change of value notice. And then that starts that 30-day process over again for anybody that gets one of those change of value notices. They get another whole shot at 30 days to appeal that change of value notice. So I thought I'd just, in case there was any question, I wanted to make sure I clarified that as much as possible, on those. So in the past, this county has sent out prior to my day, 1,000 or 2,000 change of value notice corrections for areas. Okay, I think we sent out less than 200 this year, for after the initial change of value. So it's not uncommon. It's not a practice that isn't done. It has been done many, many times. Like I said, in the past, prior to my time, I heard where they've sent out a couple thousand, on something. So thought I'd clarify that for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Again, sorry, but we need more clarification again. The previous manager for the RV park was let go in October of 2019. From that point forward, that position was not eliminated. Susan Grant took over. She used to work at HAPO. She began as RV park manager right away. So I just want to clarify that. That's never changed. We have a manager position.
Thank you. All right. Is there any other elected or department heads? Seeing none, we're back to public comment. Is there anybody for public comment? Anybody on the phone? No. Anybody in the room?
Actually, I want to comment really quick, because she's correct. The clarification was the reporting, the chain of reporting. So what happened was, at least that was my understanding, and that at the time that Mr. French was running it, he had the capability, he was looking at the numbers, he wanted to run it. I still didn't like the idea, but it was that I don't believe the manager was to report to the track. Now granted, that doesn't mean there's not conversation going on, but the idea was the direct connection between this board and the functioning of their asset. That's just from a paper standpoint. So I want to make that clarification.
Thank you.
It's small, but it's there.
We have a lot of clarification going on today. Is there anybody else in the room for public comment?
Or clarification.
All righty. Seeing none, I think we have one executive session, correct, Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, sir. 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
This is RCW 4230.110, Section 1, subsection B, real estate acquisition or site selection.
All righty. Thank you. At this time, we'll recess into executive session. We've come out of executive session. We're back to regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the county?
No, sir, we're finished.
Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.